Infinity and Me, illustrations by Gabby Swiatkowska, and written by Kate Hosford. The night I got my new red shoes, I couldn't wait to wear them in school. I was too excited to sleep, so I went outside and sat on the lawn. When I looked up, I shivered. The sky seemed so cold and huge. How many stars were in the sky? 1,000,000? 1,000,000,000? Maybe the number was as big as infinity. I started to feel very, very small. How could I even think about something as big as infinity? At school the next day, I asked my friend Charlie how he imagines infinity. That's easy, said Uma, he said. It's a giant number that keeps growing bigger and bigger and bigger forever. I thought about trying to write that number down. Even if I lived forever, I would never finish. I went to the ice cream after school with my best friend Samantha. Sam, when you think about infinity, what do you see? I see the infinity symbol. It looks kind of like an 8 that fell over and took a nap. If I were a racetrack, I would drive around it forever. Samantha made me feel a little bit better. Writing the symbol wouldn't take that long at all. I traced a napping 8 in the dirt with my shoe. Before school the next day, I asked Grandma how she imagines infinity. She smiled and said, I like to think about my family. First, you have the great-grandparents, then the grandparents, then the parents, then the children, then the grandchildren, then the great-grandchildren, and it could go on forever. I couldn't really imagine that many people in one family, but I did realize something. It was hard to talk about infinity without talking about forever. And I also realized something else. Not one person had noticed my new red shoes, not even Grandma, who usually notices everything. I looked down to make sure they were still shining. Then I started to wonder, what would I like to do forever? At first, I thought I might like to have recess forever and play forever. But there's no school before recess and no school after recess. Is it really recess anymore? Maybe I'd like to be 8 forever. But I didn't know if Samantha would still want to be my best friend when she was 85 and I was still 8. Maybe I could lick an ice cream cone forever and just have infinite ice cream. But what if my tongue started to hurt? Actually, my head was starting to hurt from all of these thoughts about infinity and forever. When I went to the lunchroom, I asked our cook, Mr. Mancini, how he imagines infinity. He held up a noodle. How many times do you think you could cut this noodle in half? I cut it in half 6 times, but then it got too small and I was afraid I might cut my finger instead of the noodle. In your mind, Mr. Mancini said, could you cut that tiny piece of noodle in half forever? I asked Mrs. Reed, our music teacher, about infinity, and I wish I hadn't. Picture music that goes in a circle, she said. The notes would lead us around and around. That music would be endless. And it would keep repeating itself. But it would go on forever. I started to think that my questions about infinity might be endless. It was time for me to go home with my red shoes. For dinner, Grandma made me my favorite meal, butter chicken and rice. As she mixed the spices, she looked at me and said, Uma, I meant to tell you this morning, those are the most beautiful shoes I've ever seen. I didn't hear the rest of what Grandma said. I was too busy smiling. Right then, I knew my love for her was as big as infinity. Infinite love. Well, that's a beautiful idea. That night, I asked her if she would like to look at the stars with me. Snuggled up next to Grandma, the sky didn't seem so huge and cold anymore. Now it was more like a sparkly blanket covering us both. The end. Can you think of something that is infinite, that goes on forever?